Madam Principal and Vice Chancellor, Professor Buleng Lenkabula, the Chairperson of Council, Mr. Mabue, the Executive Management of the University, all members of Council, all the Deans of Faculty, ladies and gentlemen, all the staff members, the students of UNISA, everyone who is connected to the ceremony through Microsoft Teams and live streaming this morning, welcome. I would also like to acknowledge our own UNISA radio, which is broadcasting the proceedings live. And now, ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, I would like to request all of us to observe a moment of silence in remembrance of a member of UNISA Council, staff members and students who have lost their lives and their loved ones due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you. And now, ladies and gentlemen, as we begin, I would like to call Professor T.D. Mashau from the Department of Christian Spirituality, Christ History, and Missiology to come and offer meditation for us.
Program Director, Chairperson of Council, Madam Principal and Vice Chancellor, and all Unisans. Our meditation this morning is entitled, "We Need God as Our Protective Wall of Fire to Succeed in Our Academic Project." When everything else has failed, our last hope is in the Creator, the giver, protector, and sustainer of life. We are doing this official opening in what I consider to be a defining moment in the history of humanity and of this institution. We all live in the context of death and dying. Our lives are paradoxically placed. We celebrate life on one hand, and at the same time, we mourn it. It is the hour where enemies, both physical and spiritual, abound. Humanity is at war. COVID-19 and other life challenges are shaking humanity to the core. We are resilient, but at the same time, afraid. We feel weak and vulnerable. And it is this defining moment where we seek someone beyond our strength. I stand here and I'm not shaken by what life brings to us. In particular, in this particular storm of COVID-19 and other life challenges, we stand firm because we know the power of God. We need God at this hour. I'm encouraged by the words of the prophet Zechariah in chapter 2, verse 5, when he said, "For I'll be a wall of fire around them, declares the Lord, and I'll be the glory within them." These are ancient words to Israel, but remain relevant in our time. We need God as our protective wall of fire to succeed. We are aware that we stand in a defining moment of transition in our institution. We are officially welcoming the new chair of council, new principal and vice chancellor, and for them to succeed in their tenure, we need the protective wall of fire around them. As they carry out their mandate, and in particular the transformation agenda, they are faced with enormous challenges to transform the agenda of the academic project in this institution. We pray that God will surround them like a protective wall of fire. We pray for wisdom, discernment, and radicality in their approach, but always remain humble and servants of Unisans. Speaking of the radical approach, we are encouraged and strengthened by the words of Paulo Freire, who, in the pedagogy of the oppressed, said, the more radical the person is, the more fully he or she enters into reality, so that knowing it better, he or she can transform it. This individual is not afraid to confront, to listen, to see the world unveiled. This person is not afraid to meet the people or enter into a dialogue with them. This person does not consider himself or herself the proprietor of history or of all people, or the liberator of the oppressed, but he or she commit himself or herself within history to fight at the side of the oppressed. We pray for this kind of leadership at UNISA, and for God to build a protective wall of fire around us. This prayer includes all of management and different leaders at various levels of our university. We pray for our staff members that UNISA will always show to be a force of unity. We pray for our students and all the academic tasks that lie ahead. May we all experience the protective wall of fire around us. May its warmth also reach those who have lost their loved ones and their jobs through COVID-19. As we begin with this academic year, may God be our protective wall of fire around us. As and when we succeed in this project, may we remain humble and always remember Ebenezer. And indeed, we should always look back and say, if it wasn't for God, it was not, if it wasn't for God as our protective wall of fire, we will not be where we are today. God became our Emmanuel, God with us, and build a tent among humanity and be like us in order to defeat the sting of death and all our life challenges. And today we stand here with confidence, and we can sing with the psalmist in Psalm 23 verse 4 when he said, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Let's walk with confidence, knowing that God is dependable and always remains true to the promise that God makes. Amen.
Thank you very much, Professor Mashau, for rendering that meditation. Thank you for the words of comfort and encouragement during this difficult time. I believe that it has reached the ears of everybody who is experiencing difficulties in their lives right now. And as we move forward as an institution, as we push forward the transformation agenda, may we always remember that we are never alone. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to invite Dr. Genevieve James, the Deputy Director, Community Engagement Office here at UNISA, to join us and introduce our new Chairperson of Council. But before I can call her, I just want to remind all of us also, please, all the speakers, that if it's not your turn to speak, please make sure that your mic is muted. And when you do come on, make sure that your video is on so that we can be able to both hear you and see you. And now I invite Dr. Genevieve James.
I observe all protocol. On this auspicious opening of the 2021 academic year, an academic opening laden with historic significance, it is my duty to introduce you to UNISA's new Chairperson of Council. Mashakudu James Maboa is a person of high distinction and remarkable service orientation, who has good standing in public service. His presence in council will enhance UNISA's profile and reputation in being associated with the distinguished South African whose lifelong commitment is to the deepening of democracy and nation building through the audit profession. It is important to note that Council ensures the promotion of strong principles of integrity within the university. Council remains the overall custodian of good governance and the implementation thereof. And so, Mr. Maboa's appointment will give expression to the vision and mission, principles, strategy, and values of UNISA and its council. A careful study of Mr. Maboa's service to South Africa reveals that he is of conspicuous merit. As a perusal of his responsibilities and accomplishments reveal critical competencies that will add great value to the function of council. UNISA family, stakeholders, and communities, hear now the profile of Mashakudu James Maboa, our new Chairperson of Council. Mr. Maboa is a chartered accountant and registered auditor with vast experience in various fields, including financial management, accounting, auditing, corporate governance, tax, developmental finance, and the broader corporate finance field. He previously worked for Deloitte & Touche, the National Empowerment Fund, and Investec Private Bank in corporate finance. He is currently an executive director, this since 2007, at Movindlela Consulting, heading up the corporate finance and financial consulting divisions. The corporate finance division's focus is to assist clients in raising funds with various development funding institutions, which include the National Empowerment Fund, the Industrial Development Corporation of Southern Africa, the Small Enterprises Finance Agency, and the Development Bank of Southern Africa. He also works with the major banks in South Africa. The Financial Consulting Division renders various services, including tax, accounting, and auditing. The company also assists municipalities and government entities with audit readiness services. He has also served on several boards and audit committees in both private and public sectors in a non-executive role. And so, in these non-executive roles, he has been exercising his fiduciary duties in accordance with the King IV, Companies Act, and Medical Schemes Act. He currently serves on the following governance structures in non-executive roles. Nehau Investment Holdings, Isizwe Mining Development Trust, Pelchem Limited, the UNISA Council, the UNISA Enterprise, Isizwe Mining, South African Nuclear Energy Corporation, the Finance and Accounting Services Sector, and the Sector Education and Training Authority. Nehau Investments Holdings, here again, he is on the current audit committee. Construction CETA, MedShield Medical Scheme. Mr. Maboa is privileged to have previous audit committee roles in the Public Service Sector Education and Training Authority, the Elanzeni District Municipality, the Construction Education and Training Authority, the City of Motlosana Municipality, the Johannesburg Roads Agency, the Johannesburg City Parks and Zoo, where he was the chairperson, the Public Administration Leadership and Management Academy, Government Employees Pension Fund, and HOSMED Medical Scheme, where he was chairperson, and finally, the Services SETA, where yet again, where he was chairperson. Friends of UNISA and colleagues, it is a great honor today to welcome Mr. Maboa to the helm of UNISA's council. Sir, you take the reins at a pivotal time in national and global history. At a time when the nation is wounded and development challenges have deepened and are seemingly intractable. Sir, you take the reins at a time when higher education must stand and be counted and must be assets in the progress and healing of society. We place our aspirations and hopes in your hands as chairperson of council and vow to work with you. May wisdom, discernment, and integrity be your fellow travelers on the road you will travel as our chairperson. We welcome you with great excitement and thank you for your service to this great institution, the University of South Africa. Thank you.
Program Director, the Chancellor of UNISA, His Excellency Dr. Thabo Mbeki, members of the UNISA Council, the Principal and Vice Chancellor, Prof. Buleng Lenkabula, members of the UNISA Executive and Extended Management, UNISA staff members, President of our National SRC, executive members, and all student formations, members of the UNISA community linking with us from all the regional offices, including those in Addis Ababa, leaders of NAHAO and ABSA, and all labor formations, representatives from City of Tshwane, members of the diplomatic corps, friends of the University of South Africa from all walks of life, members of the media houses. Thobela, Abusheni, Sanbonani, good morning, Macheloni, Molweni, Khuyemore, Dumelang, Lotshani. It gives me a great pleasure to address you in my capacity as an old council member, but now in my new role as the chairperson of the UNISA Council. I am both humbled and grateful for the honor accorded to me to be the leader of the council of this great institution. One that has historically shaped features of so many people in our country, on the African continent and elsewhere around the globe. This is an institution whose uniqueness is revealed in its character as the single dedicated, comprehensive, open distance learning higher education institution in South Africa. I'm also elated that my new role coincides with the term of office of the new Vice Principal of the University of South Africa, that is Professor Lenkabula. Her appointment as the first woman principal and vice chancellor of this old institution, thus making real her story, attests not only to UNISA's commitment to transformation of the higher education landscape and the need to redress previous injustices referred to in the Constitution. Professor Lenkabula's appointment also reveals UNISA's commitment to the affirmation and celebration of the hereto hidden and uncelebrated female capacity and talent. Council very much looks forward to working together with her and to the great wealth of wisdom and managerial experience that she brings with her for the welfare of the great institution. Could we all give her the support she needs in her endeavors as the new head of this institution? It is a well-known fact that UNISA Council is set up to ensure that efficient running of the institution in terms of governance and strategic leadership. As a structure within UNISA, Council has a role of governing the institution according to the provisions of the Higher Education Act, as well as according to the principles of governance which are generally recognized. Council performs the following functions amongst others the approval of the institutional statute and any amendments thereto, the making of university rules, the establishment of committees of council, the appointment of employees, the determination of the conditions of service, disciplinary provisions, privileges, and functions of employees, subject to and in accordance with applicable labor law, in consultation with Senate, the determination of the language policy of the university, as well as the determination of the academic structure that's required, and the approval of the annual budget of the university. It is in light of the preceding brief description of what council's business is, that I see my role as that of providing overall quality leadership by ascertaining that policies of UNISA as well as council resolutions are implemented. In that way, one will hopefully enable UNISA to be the lead in higher education, management, and good governance. As council, we will be guided by the university strategic document and the annual performance plan, also acknowledging that one cannot do it alone. This stance is endorsed by the proverbial limping buffalo, which can outrun a bunch of lions should they be divided and not be united in their pursuit. Above all, and as a starter in these challenging times, I intend to pay special attention to the following key areas. One, the improvement of the ICT. I need not state the obvious about the changed new setting in which all of us, including institutions of higher learning, have been thrown by the pandemic of COVID-19. The distress brought about by the virus has come to challenge us all to come up with innovative ways and to do more and as effectively as possible in using ICT in teaching, learning, research, administrative and professional support, as well as in management processes. To that end, more energy should be channeled towards the improvement on enhanced information and communication technology for both student and staff. Such a focus is also part of the key focus of the university strategy. As you may be aware, the university has adopted an open, distance, and e-learning strategy. We can thus not roll out the programs at this university without proper, efficient, and well-capacitated ICT environment. Let us all embark on our journey ahead, being mindful that we will be enabled by ICT to be the cutting Odell institution. The second focus area would be research output and pass rates. The low research outputs and low throughput rates should be of great concern to all of us. Also, the low attrition rates, which typify our institution, need to be corrected as a matter of urgency, especially in a country like South Africa that provides research incentives. Researchers that provide research incentives. Researchers need to be encouraged to throw their weight into publishing quality research that will be for the benefit of both the country and those beyond its borders. Also, in line with our vision as the African University shaping futures, it is important for our research outputs to leave an imprint that displays our identity. Also, as we work harder to improve the throughput rate of our M&D students, we will hopefully contribute some of the very low PhD throughput, which is at 34% rate for the whole country. The third focus area is financial sustainability. There is a need to put in place an effective financial strategy. This especially considering the negative impact of the pandemic on the country's economy. A healthy institution is characterized by, amongst others, a strong financial muscle as well as financial sustainability. Above the latter, the following may be found to be helpful. Third stream income. The latter comprises of the following, among others: contract and sponsored research funding, entrepreneurial and commercial income, philanthropic funding, and internal financing, amongst others. To that end, there will be a need to work harder to improve our fundraising activities through the UNISA Foundation and the alumni, amongst others. In conclusion, the new normal is challenging us to put more effort on what is known to be our genes as an institution, that is, being an ordained institution with more dedication and excellence. It has also come to challenge each of us to conceptualize a working from home space differently. That is a space where more and quality work can be done in a more flexible environment. The pandemic has come to remind us all to be our own managers, taking comfort, doing our tasks diligently, and with all the loyalty away from the eye of the line manager. This frame of mind calls for an unequivocal commitment to excellence and innovation, an adaptation to the new environment in which the institution operates, by being flexible and agile in delivering on the university's mandate. I call upon UNISA community to be resilient and compliant with the COVID-19 regulations, thus helping our government in its concerted effort to fight against the present health crisis. I wish you all well in the new academic year. I thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson, for those introductory remarks. The Chancellor of the University of South Africa, His Excellency President Thabo Mbeki, Chairperson of UNISA Council, Mr. Mashukuru Mabua, members of UNISA Council, members of the Executive and Extended Management, UNISA staff members, President of the National Student Representative Council, executive members of all student formations, members of UNISA community linking with us from all regions, including Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, leaders of NEHAWU and ABSA in all labor formations, representatives from the city of Tshwane, members of the diplomatic corps, friends of the University of South Africa from all walks of life, members of the media houses, distinguished guests, sisters, brothers, ladies and gentlemen, I greet you all. As the African proverb goes, no matter how long and dark the night is, a new dawn will break. This proverb is poignant, for as we officially open the 2021 academic year, the trepidations of the past year and the opportunities for the future are glaring, yet somewhat in a blurred manner. This might be simply because, as many ask, is this year a continuation of 2020, a year which we had never been through, for which it turned out for many as annus horribilis. Our university opening today takes place within difficult conditions as the deadly COVID-19 pathogen is continuing to wreak havoc, mutating and reconstituting itself into more fervent variants, thus worsening the already evident negative implications of the pandemic for South Africa and the world. The COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted the core business of many institutions. Sadly, many died from this pandemic, including some members of our council, students, staff, colleagues, friends, families, and many in our world. I wish to pause for a minute as we remember those of our students and staff who have passed away due to COVID-19. Thank you. In 2020 and today, South Africa and the global socio-economic challenges typified by high youth unemployment, poverty, gender inequalities, administrative challenges in many public, private, civil society sectors, including higher education sectors, all became exposed as we tried to navigate the pandemic. Inequalities that exist in our society became unmasked and the glaring divides painfully laid bare. These extreme societal distempers are a reminder of a continued role that higher education systems must play in advancing intellectual formation, socio-economic transformations, well-being, and ecological care through teaching and learning, research and innovation, and engaged scholarship. In reflecting on the years past and focusing on the current and the future, we shall ask the question, have universities, including UNISA, been in the forefront of resourcing states, societies, peoples, varieties of sectors to proactively manage the conditions and implications of a pandemic that has forced a new way of doing things? Have societies and our own students and staff looked at universities as sites of envisioning solutions to the pandemic that has affected the globe in a devastating way? How will universities project their public mandate and be a constitutive partner in the construction of ideas, inventions, knowledge systems aimed at overcoming the eroded economies and lives during this pandemic? What contributions will we make to preclude death and dying, unemployment, losses of income, hunger, marginalization, and untold suffering among students from vulnerable economic and social strata, and for families and communities whose hope for the future have been decimated by this pandemic? A survey by the International Association of Universities, an affiliate organization of UNESCO, provides a picture of the global impact of the pandemic on universities. These entail, among others, the physical closure of universities and therefore disruption to teaching and learning, with many shifting to different forms of distant and non-contact teaching and learning, including online. Another is the decrease in retention and new enrollments of students, with some current students dropping out as they could not cope with online learning and prospective entrance to the system deferring their applications. Weakening of partnerships between universities as institutions became inward-looking, focusing on coping mechanisms and new ways of self-management. Negative impact on international students' mobility, resulting in decreased international student numbers, but also experiences of internationalization. Disruptions to examination timetables, with cancellations in certain regions, delays in the release dates of results, and delays in the resumption of the academic year. And in addition, they state that the negative impact on community engagement initiatives and engaged scholarship, while research outputs to contribute the findings of solution to the pandemic increased. Our own experiences as UNISA suggest that we were affected in multiple ways. First, the physical closure of UNISA, with staff having to work from home. Second, because of the physical closure of our campuses, many UNISA young low-income students who depend on our libraries or study facilities for conducive space to study and connectivity lost access to these amenities. Third, the changes from on-site and venue-based examinations to e-examinations or online examinations, whilst highly commendable, demonstrated the fault lines of access and success in the pandemic context. This, in particular, demonstrated the digital divide that has become a glaring challenge that UNISA is currently attending to through the provision of data for students' populace. The shift to online tuition will also have a lasting effect on higher education, a challenge we embrace as an important theme in our imaginative ingenuity and strategic gaze. Fourth, UNISA's progressive legacies of historically proffering education to those who had no luxury for contact higher education was contradicted by its location in a country whose higher education faces challenges of low student participation rates as well as high attrition rates. In an era typified suddenly and forcefully by the virtual mode of doing business, the institution's identity as an open distance e-learning comprehensive university has not only become magnified, but reaffirmed as it has become invaluable. What has generally come to be known now, post-COVID or during COVID, is the notion of the new normal, which has become an abnormal normal. For me, I think this particular context not only requires us to harness our resiliency and well-being, but to tap on our philosophical understanding of Ubuntu, which impels us to embrace and care for each other and the planet as we are inextricably bound to each other. As the current pandemic, whilst global, has demonstrated the local impacts. In particular, we must contest the notion of social distancing, but allow physical distancing in order to protect one another. The notion of social distancing sometimes becomes indifferent to the care for one another and for the planet that we must at all times assert. In particular, the abnormal normal allows us the opportunity to rethink the place of higher education in our world. It ushers an opportunity, a new dawn of a new era in terms of how the various institutions, including higher education institutions, should be run. At UNISA, the goal to harness technology in the pursuit of academic project is among a key feature of UNISA's strategic orientation as it asserts its existential essence as an African university in the service of humanity. In the 2016-2030 strategy, we commit ourselves to harnessing ICTs to support the transformation of the business of the university, thus enabling performance, service, quality to all UNISA communities. We dare not slack in this pursuit. Today, in our competitive environment, knowledge production and open distance learning is no longer the monopoly of UNISA or higher education institutions. It must be recognized that institutions such as science councils, non-governmental organizations, privately funded research institutions, the SOEs and others also provide offerings like institutions of higher learning such as UNISA do. How has the sudden advent of abnormal normal therefore impacted on our throughput and pass rate as we configure ourselves in this new abnormal normal? Has the lockdown, for example, and the imposition or institution of technologies as levers of our learning, research, and innovation forced a proverbial limping animal to climb a mountain? Ware ubona ahlotsa, wa inametsa thaba. This, in the sense, is worsening of the students' attrition rate at our university, but also in higher education, which exposes students to the persisting socioeconomic inequities and exclusions that continue in this country. We should ensure that while knowledge production is the rationale of higher education, high-quality knowledge production should be fully realized with high student participation and supporting infrastructure. In today's knowledge society, higher education is supported by strong science and technology innovation systems, which are becoming more and more important in opening opportunities for people, for students, and in particular for the type of graduate that UNISA would like to develop. The technological and scientific revolutions which underpin knowledge and economic advances, improvements in the health systems and educational infrastructure will be important sites of emphasis that UNISA must focus on. It is no wonder, as part of the action plan to improve education and innovation and the role of science, that we highlight that the creation of educational and science systems that address social needs and knowledge economy must be the center of discourses at the University of South Africa. In particular, we note that the increased participation in higher education of more than 30% will need to double this number in order that our students promote postgraduate students, especially PhDs, to improve research and innovation capacities for South Africa and the continent. As an institution, we will do well if we are informed by the national agenda, but also the continental agenda in regard to overcoming the legacies of the past of underproduction of Black graduates in particular, of women, but also of other minorities. We should invest our resources towards ensuring this redress. In South Africa, the National Innovation System has brought to light the causal relationship between scientific activity and economic performance. In that way, a new way is introduced of rethinking science and technology in our society, and we must not lag behind and instead adopt agile ways of working. We must learn, unlearn, and relearn as a university community. We must contest and excavate new resources that help us to learn from the past, and thus ask ourselves, what are the lessons that we've drawn prior to COVID-19 and during COVID-19, and as we imagine the future? Even more importantly, we must ask, how may those invaluable lessons of the past be reinforced in order that the future benefits? Which new ways of doing things will we need to find and ensure that they are suitable for South Africa's context and the continent, but also for our participation in the knowledge arena? How may our pedagogies be restructured to blend smoothly with the new normal or abnormal, especially in those disciplines which set great store by fieldwork, laboratory experiments, which innovative ways can be used to ascertain that these experiments blend effortlessly with the new context? Could we make efforts to invest more in health sciences, for example, or engineering capacities, or expand our footprint in those areas that complement our national and continental innovation systems? What would be our role when we have often focused more on research and publishing and not necessarily the innovation and commercialization tracks? Perhaps the new abnormal, in which the virtual mode has not only become preferred, but has become a new imperative, impelling us to critically explore the 4-point industry, what others call the fourth industrial revolution, to ensure that this courage and reality enables us to restructure our present curricula accordingly so that our students, our products and processes can achieve graduateness. Many universities, for instance, in the new normal, will also increase their offering on online programs. This is quite important for us as UNISA to reflect upon, particularly because we have been leading in this area. When we are complacent, we may fall into prey as examples of Musica, a great music shop that used to be the best in South Africa, where art, music, and film found expression has just been muted. If we are not careful, we would be like Musica, Kodak, Nokia, and others who were complacent when changes were happening. And therefore, as students and staff, we must think around how to project our agility and reclaim the future. The conversation that we should have around the impacts on the qualitative side are also important. We must consider the programs that are competitive, that allow us the competitive advantage, whilst at the same time ensuring that we do not lose the best minds that the country or the continent and the world would require. We also have to ensure that the transformation of higher education, which has been highlighted in particular in 2015 and 2016 through varied student movements such as the fees must fall, the roads must fall, insourcing of staff, which highlighted the deep-seated challenges of curriculum, institutional cultures, and the emergent or residual injustices that continue to find historical and intellectual analysis in order that we overcome apartheid training type objectives and ensure that we democratize knowledge in the struggle to humanizing communities. These movements advocated primarily for varied issues that universities must continue grappling with. The issues around access and success, discontent against curriculum that was not as relevant to the contextual realities that students study in, the privatization and financing of higher education, and sometimes the neoliberal and liberalization hold of higher education were among some of these important levers or areas of discussions that we must continue engaging on if we are to being a liberating university. In particular, they have also asserted that universities have not always been progressive in promoting pedagogies or human rights traditions that have been led by leading scholars such as Archie Mafeje, Steve Biko, Paulo Freire, Amina Mama, Zenta Dese, Messi Amba Odioye, amongst others. They have also stated that great icons such as Winnie Mandela and others who have actually led to critical thinking around questions of being, ontology, and knowledges have also been hidden and must be unmuted. In particular, these advocacy have requested the revival of the knowledge arena that is attentive to South Africa and its opportunities. I must state that as we reflect on this, we must also recognize that in the Inequality Trends in South Africa report released by Statistics South Africa, we have learned some of the indicators that the labor market is heavily racialized and gender biased, and therefore, as universities, we should overcome such biases. We've also learned that in the University of South Africa, many of our students are dependent on NSFAS and therefore come from vulnerable economic environments. It is my submission here today that we ought to consider and implement renewed resolve to transform UNISA so that it can be relevant in the world characterized by the features that I've just outlined. To this end, I propose that our efforts in the current and later years should be focused on reclaiming the future, transforming University of South Africa to ensuring that it becomes a leader in the academic and knowledge production. For us to articulate our vision of being the university in shaping future in the service of humanity, we must correctly analyze the state of higher education and of UNISA. It is the duty of every staff and every student to transform this university to a state that we envision collectively as a site of excellence where knowledge, innovation, intellectual formation, and contribution to the economic transformation of our country and world manifest. Let us consider a few areas. Even though the existence of universities have been under scrutiny over the past few years, it is our intention to use these contestations, emerging contradictions as inspirations to improve the UNISA mandate as the leading e-learning institution in the context of decoloniality and the use of digital technologies. Our aim in 2021 should be to continue cementing the ODL requirements that are current and that are important to overcome the pandemic and the challenges that we have identified. We should improve digital systems. We should ensure that the investments which have been made in ICT enable a prosperous future in building and facilitating access to a broader use of digital technologies in multiple areas of everyday life, so that we can meet our students anywhere, anytime, and proffer the requisite support so that they become successful in their learning and research endeavors. We must also endeavor to contribute in finding solutions for multiple challenges experienced in our country and beyond. The academic project pursued by UNISA facilitates the creation of solutions using epistemologies that are context-specific, but also with global impact, thus resulting in relevant solutions. In the past few years, UNISA has developed itself as a hub for decolonial studies. It has developed itself as a hub for democratic and scientific endeavor. These have contributed immensely to the transformation of research processes, teaching, learning, and most importantly, to policy-making processes in the higher education landscape. Through ODL system, UNISA will continue to contribute towards training of skilled professionals even during the current crisis, and to catalyze and strengthen UNISA as a leader in the knowledge economy. For UNISA to contribute effectively to the academic project, research and innovation will remain fundamental and non-negotiable. Our research continues to contribute to our teaching and learning and scholarship in ways that we should be at the center of finding African solutions to the problems and exigencies that behold Africa and its people. And in the context of using epistemologies that center decoloniality, indigenization, and endogenous knowledge systems, transformation, and ingenuity, it will be important that our research, our engaged scholarship not only participate in the policy formulation, but facilitates thinking that creates theories and products and processes that enable our country and our societies to progress. Curriculum transformation remains one of the important imperatives as we maintain a move from stagnation that has plagued historical universities that tried and relied on a singular ideology of what was to be known by the knower. In this instance, we are therefore invited to reclaiming Africa's intellectual traditions, futures, civilizations, philosophies, and knowledge systems, precisely because Africa has rich intellectual histories and histories. Reclaiming Africa's intellectual traditions is important to help showcase and inspire South Africa's youth and young adults, but also of the continent, to continue reclaiming the future and reinventing it. To draw on the past and the current innovations in higher education that Africa contributes towards the global knowledge construction, it is important that we should identify the empirical and factual historical data that demonstrate these rich intellectual traditions that we must tap on. We must draw inspiration from forebears who had the courage to institute learning centers, research areas, and universities. And one of those interesting ideas that we must promote is the legacy of the establishment of universities. For instance, one of the oldest continuously operating degree-granting university in the world is a University of Al-Qarawiyyin, operating today as University of Al-Qarawiyyin in Morocco, which was established by a woman, Fatima bint Mohammed al-Farid al-Qarshiyya, in 1859 CE. There are many other examples that we may highlight to demonstrate Africa's inventive intellectual traditions, which must continuously shape our resolve as UNISA to seek and pursue new and globally resourceful curriculum, research, innovations, and ideas. The continued inventions of archives of these intellectual traditions are attested to, for example, in the Middle Ages by the institutions and libraries such as the Timbuktu manuscripts. These are among some of the indisputable and best-known treasures of scholarship in the areas of medicine, philosophy, astronomy, mathematics, civilizations, and more. UNISA must today draw from contemporary schools of thoughts, ideation, and research embodied in the words of leading icons who have been helpful in assisting knowledge production of the ideas that helped us as Africans to be uncompromisingly decolonial in our thinking, in our work, in the radical imagination of the claims of the future that we must promote. The emergence and growth of revolutionary feminist and womanist intellectual traditions, firmly anchored in and which reflect on the experiences of women and gender non-conforming persons, are quite important scholarly enterprises, especially in our countries and in contexts where gender-based violence or marginalization of women and non-conforming individuals have become normative or proportionally high. Inspirational, feminist, womanist, and liberational social justice scholars such as Patricia McFadden, Pumla Qola, Georgie Chikata, Zen Tadese, Eleanor Sisulu, and others must gain interest and support if we are to create our own knowledges. What then do reclaiming intellectual traditions of Africa mean for us as UNISA, and why are they important? I'm of the view that universities are the fulcrum of knowledge, and the idea of higher education system must be embraced by the young precisely because education is a transformative act, and higher education must be a resource towards social justice, empowering the voiceless in society, but it must also anchor opportunities for entrepreneurial enterprise in order to ensure that we have self-determination and that our economic systems are sustainable and can become resilient. We must also ensure that reclaiming and advancing African intellectual resources, traditions, means that we must not only think and publish about Africa, we must think, rethink Africa in the world, Africa in relation, but also others in relation to the world and Africa. We must rethinking itself in order that we imagine and invent those ideas that will help shape Africa's identity and institutions as true expressions of African intellectual ideas located within and outside the continent. Some practical suggestions to make this a true reality may include the reclamation of ontologies and centering teaching and learning, as well as our research outputs. On the other hand, we could say UNISA Press stands at the cusp of changing the publishing landscape because of its sheer size as a single largest publisher of academic journals and academic outputs in the country. This must be harnessed so that the knowledge arena is dedicated to African-centered studies whilst also focusing on global knowledge systems. The press may consider having dedicated series on range of areas as it is the general practice with established university presses. We must ensure that our programs are relevant and appeal to the changing landscape and the shifting knowledge arena. While centered in advancing African intellectual traditions, global knowledge systems, our programs must retain their relevance and appeal and must be sites of excellence. First, they must respond and provide graduates with critical skills necessary for them to navigate the challenges and opportunities that the world provides. Second, we must earnestly address some of the challenges that we have had to face in the past years, challenges that are not limited to UNISA, but which also time to time arise in the higher education system that sometimes lead to the greater losses or de-accreditation of some courses. This means we must at all times aspire for quality, ensure and enrich our degrees and update them in order that they are agile. We must ensure that we rectify whatever lessons that have derailed UNISA as a leader in the knowledge arena. We should also continue to strengthen required collaborations between colleges, universities, science councils, international universities, in order that our programs are not stagnant, but are always rethinking and reimagining themselves. We must ensure that our research and programs stand their own against their peers internationally, both on the African continent and beyond. To this end, we appeal to academics, to students, to ensure that they enhance excellence and they aspire to be the best in the disciplines that they lead or in the multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary engagements or research or engaged scholars that they're involved in. Of particular importance, I suggest that it will be quite important that we relate with sites of excellence in the varied knowledge arena, including relating to some think tanks or institutions such as the Council for the Development of Social Science Research in Africa, the associations of the built environments, and others which are in the forefront of shaping Africa's infrastructures, futures, and ideas. We must be responsive as a community that emphasizes the pitfalls. We must avoid the pitfalls of utilitarianism, wherein our work is only aimed at creating people who cannot think outside the box. This means we must always harness the ideas of educational progressive educationists such as Paulo Freire that gives us the legacies of liberation and transformative knowledge systems. In particular, we must not be ashamed of the Ubuntu philosophy, of which our university is a leading intellectual center through its African philosophy program, partly because these discourage us from cognitive dissonance between our educatedness and the concerns for the struggling in our society. Ubuntu approach entwines our whole being with the decisions that we make in life and our responsiveness to our environment, both human and ecological. Our community engagement, and engaged scholarship programs should be manifestations of our praxis and our lived endeavor of the global idea of being human and humanizing the global arena. UNISA's libraries and center should be engaged in collaborations that harness these notions of Ubuntu, but also of inter-institutional learning. We must ensure that education and the academic endeavor is always at the center of psychosocial success, whilst at the same time improving quality of education of learners in the specialist but also non-specialist subject. In particular, our country requires mathematicians, chemists, physics experts, life sciences and accounting sciences, and we must project excellence in these areas. We should also carve niche areas in those disciplines that UNISA has never been associated with. Some of the suggestions that we would like to ensure we institute within the university in 2021 is really focused work on energy and sustainability, aviation and aeronautical studies, marine studies and water resources management, gender and feminist and womanist theorization, global trade and international or multilateralism, cognitive sciences, which are associated with the fourth industrial revolution, disciplinary and multidisciplinary disciplines, entrepreneurship, and participation in space sciences. If UNISA were to identify these as niche areas, it will not fall prey into the complacent university that does only what it has always been excellent in, but it will demonstrate that universities as sites of imagination and investigation is ahead. On our students, we must recognize that at undergraduate levels, 50%, 57% of our students are supported by the National Financial Aid System. In terms of race of our students, we should understand that 332,000 students are of African descent. 19,000 are of mixed descent. 15,000 are of Indian or Asian origin. And less than 15,000 come from white community. This for us means that the finance department must also work with colleges to ensure that students who come from low-income backgrounds receive the requisite support in order to extricate themselves from the challenges that education lifts them up from. It is against this background that we must generate and formulate a general posture of responses to the needs of our students in order to enable them to pass. The plight of our students requires at least 3 responses from our staff, both academic and administrative. First, our administrative systems must be accessible and easy to use for students, some of whom may be meeting the online platform for the first time. Second, we must show empathy to most of our students who may struggle to understand the basic concept that students from privileged backgrounds or affluent backgrounds are often already aware of. On our tutoring systems, we must ensure that our academic support is enhanced and therefore bridges the gap between these bifurcations. Third, we must ensure and continue to work on our throughput and pass rates as the levels of failure rate, but also of drop-off and drop-out are high. We should be concerned about high and low throughput rate. We must improve counseling services for students so that they succeed, as well as improving the systems that enhance quality in their studies. We must also ensure that institutional cultures of universities, including reclaiming our UNISA as a leader in the aftermath of COVID-19 pandemic and in the fourth industrial revolution, becomes an ideal that we can achieve. The South African Human Rights Commission report also has demonstrated the imperative for social cohesion, social capital, and social justice. This implies that UNISA staff and students will be required to undertake lawful conduct for themselves and demonstrate ethical leadership. We must also enhance our administration in order that our students do not fall through the cracks. And finally, I want to request that we should demonstrate ethical leadership in ensuring that our scholarship is developmental and helps our society. We must not be complacent and be happy to find our names in the list of published in varied media, whilst we are not at all interested in the changes that our work should be doing. And I want to therefore request that as we do so, we must ensure that Africa's focused intelligentsia, whose scholarship and acumen looks towards the developmental project of the country, find resonance in the skilling, reskilling, and in the improvement of our staff and students. We must claim the future and sustain UNISA as a resilient institution which projects the best Africa's talents has. Thank you. I wish to declare 2021 academic year open. Thank you.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Professor McKay, who's going to be presenting the University of Oldenburg certificates. Based on a corporate agreement between the Carl von Ossietzky University of Oldenburg and the University of South Africa, both parties agreed to cooperatively offer UNISA colleagues the Certificate in Online Teaching and Learning, OTL, of advanced studies, while at the same time having the opportunity to pursue the Master of Education in Open and Distance Learning at UNISA. The program was developed in response to a growing challenge at UNISA to advance excellence, innovation, and leadership in ODEL teaching, learning, and research. The program contributes to UNISA increasingly being acknowledged in international and national contexts, in broadening theorization in ODEL and informing ODEL practice and policy development. The Certificate of Advanced Studies in Online Teaching and Learning exposes the students to authentic online educational experiences, best practices, and keeping track of current trends in ODEL. It is a full-time, challenging, and intensive online program consisting of 4 modules. The program is characterized by its richness in learning activities, including interactions with seminal works, pioneers, and active researchers in ODEL. The first 2 cohorts of colleagues received their certificates late in 2020 and early in 2021 from the Carl von Ossietzky University in Oldenburg in Germany. And now it gives me great pleasure to invite Professor McKay to announce the certificates by reading out the names of the recipients for 2021. Professor McKay, over to you.
Madam Program Director, it's my great honor and pleasure today to announce the names of the recipients of the Oldenburg Certificate. We start with Zainab Aziz, Pira Bikard, Mukundelele Katumba, Pumza Makhato Kuno, Solomon Alwi Mawela, Kelebohile Mudal, Alwani Malwashe Tagwi, Sibungile Sylvia Takana, Makhopo Tele, Sizakele Danke, Mirella Ironback, Vilhelmina Johanna Grief, Florence Malonghani, Joel Lekau Rachidi, Silly Elizabeth Mamatla Tabani, and lastly, Annalise Meinert. On behalf of the university, we wish to congratulate all the recipients of this very important certificate.
Thank you very much once again, Professor McKay. And I would also like to echo again in congratulating all the recipients of the certificate. I hope that the University of South Africa students and colleagues will benefit from all the knowledge and insights that they would have gained from the qualification. Thank you once again. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our program, and it gives me great pleasure to now invite Ms. P. Chabalala, the Vice Principal, Information and Communication Technology at UNISA, to render a vote of thanks and also to close the proceedings for the day. Over to you, Ms. Chabalala.
All protocol observed. Let me take the time afforded to me to make a special thank you to all who made today special as it has been. From our program director, Prof. Sekgalo, you have excellently directed the program with energy that kept us all glued to our screens in excitement. Thank you, Prof. Mashao, for the spiritual refueling and subordination that has laid the foundation of this event. Indeed, God has laid a protective wall of fire over UNISA. Dr. James, we thank you for that warm and welcoming introduction of our chairperson of council. To you, Prof. Linkabula and Mr. Mabua, great leaders are people in which others have confidence and respect. People in your roles have clear goals that are open to alternative perspectives. They care about the people who work with them, but are capable of making hard decisions when necessary. They are self-confident without being loud, aggressive, or dominating. We have felt this in your welcome and opening addresses today. They say a new broom sweeps cleaner. But what are they saying about two new brooms sweeping the same floor at the same time? I will call that spring cleaning. To our brand new Vice Chancellor, Professor Linkabula, we thank you for the direct and leading message. The Chairperson of Risk Committee, Mr. Nzimane, if he was here given an opportunity, he will say, we have been led. Our brand new Chairperson of Council, Mr. Mabua, we thank you for the assurance of support from Council. We look forward to a fruitful year in this regard. It is common knowledge that most important qualities of a good leader include integrity, accountability, empathy, humility, resilience, vision, influence, and positivity. While management is about persuading people to do things that they sometimes don't like doing, leadership is about inspiring people to do the things that they never thought they could do. Professor Veronica McKay, my partner in crime, thank you for the love and encouragement I have seen you demonstrating when you were presenting the certificates. How can I forget the team that has put the whole event together, from getting the speakers ready during the week, being patient with all of us, for this perfect event as it has been today. Thank you, colleagues. I will not name each of you by names, avoiding the risk of missing others. You have shown the power of teamwork. Well done. To the recipients of the Chairperson of Council Award and Excellence, and those of the University of Oldenburg certificates, I want to thank you and congratulate you all for the sterling performance which held our university high. To all of you who were in the run-up, you contributed a lot to the organization, and this contribution has led us to the pride and great achievements that we are celebrating here today. Keep up the great work and inspire more of us to follow suit. George Groban, in his speech on embracing fear and trusting your instinct, he once said, I quote, "I believe that it would be better to fail at doing something challenging, something worthwhile, and something exciting to show to the world than to succeed doing something safe, something that wouldn't actually inspire much at all." I unquote. When it comes to your future experiences, and as you enter the new academic year, with your knowledge and excitement, as you prioritize and reprioritize activities and plans, always remember that if you are not scared, at least be worried. A biggest thank you to all who attended this event today. You have been a great audience. Now that we have been directed, we have been motivated, let's gather all strength and make success of 2021 academic year. We should be mindful of a quote from Jasmine Ward that said, "Real success requires step after step after step after step. It requires choice after choice. It demands education and passion and commitment and perseverance, as well as the hunger and patience." I wish you all and your families a blessed and safe day further. Remember to celebrate the weekend of love safely. And to those who are looking, please choose your Valentines carefully. I thank you all.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to invite our very own Ms. Natalia Molebadzi, our poet. She's based in the library services here at UNISA, to please join us now to render a poem. Ms. Molebadzi, over to you.
There will always be a pantheon of deities who will lead your path to any sky, any limitless sky. And behind you, around you, behind you, around you will be an entire tribe of warriors who remind you that we never walk alone, never dance alone, never try alone, never lead alone. So illuminate the way and the rest will follow. And when the answers do not come, know that the ancestors will whisper into your ears an entire ocean of visions. Know that we come from the book of yes. Know that when we were born, answers were whispered into our ears in languages of diamonds that cannot be erased. Know that we carry amulets. We carry amulets that our ancestors gave. Know that we will always welcome a tomorrow that will define future people's dreams. And know that our lives are worth defending, 'cause we never walk alone, never dance alone, never cry alone, never try alone, never lead alone. So So walk, illuminate the way, and the rest will follow. Know that we never dance alone. Know that this is not a poem. It is just a pouring from the eyes of a sister into the open heart of another sister, another time that says, Siyakubona, hello, sawubona, siyakubona, ibile riyadumela, riyahudumedisa, wena watsela, you who was named after the rain, for the rain, before the rain, you who comes with the rain. Wena watselanyana, wena matsebo, you who comes with an entire ocean of vision. Riyadumela.